Let's have a review of some of the stories in the news. So we'll begin this morning with the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, Osamhanze, in his first press conference, has issued a stern warning to property owners in Abuja who are violating the city's master plan, saying buildings constructed in unauthorized areas will be demolished. Idahosa Osamhanze is here this morning and is looking very good. I like to compliment him when he's wearing something looking very bright, and I want to take you away. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Blessing.
Good morning, welcome.
Good morning.
I hope nobody is jealous because I think somebody wants to say something. Anyway.
I just want to say good morning, welcome on board, and thanks for looking sharp and bright today also.
Maybe when you look like him, I'll take you away too.
Oh, it's okay, it's fine.
Idahosa Osamhanze is Director of Policy Research, African Development Studies Center. All right, now to the Minister of the FCT. This seems like the first go-to for every minister of the FCT since the time of Erifai as Minister of the FCT, demolishing houses built on unauthorized areas. But the question is, who authorized those buildings at first? How did those structures come into play? Why did the government or whoever was in charge of the FCT ministry allow buildings to start from ground up to a certain level, and then a minister comes to say, I'm going to demolish all the structures? Idahosa.
Well, congratulations to all the members of cabinet now sworn in, and I hope that everybody had hit the ground running, which was what the president told us during the campaign, that he was going to hit the ground running. And I think that was what was happening yesterday when the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory read the riot act in that first press briefing. You see, we live in an environment where a lot of things are done by individuals, non-state actors who become so very powerful, and they can take on even the authority of the state. So asking who approves it, some of these things may not even be approved. And some people are so powerful that they can secure manner and kind of approval. That said, I think the mood really for us as a nation should really go beyond talking, that people can quietly go into action and actually start to act. You mentioned Erifai first coming as the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, pulling down structure to ensure that the master plan was reformed. And that did not come without criticism, because a lot of people felt that Erifai destroyed some other people's property, take over some other people's property that he gave to his cronies. And these issues are still festering. They could actually be part of the reason why a lot of people wanted to ask questions why his crony was to take place. So these are very critical national issues that we need to tread softly. I don't have issues if people have violated the city plan and then they have to pay for it. But we will advise that the Minister for FCT should tread with caution, and then, of course, also avoid selective justice.
Okay, we had a chat some time ago, that should be in May, with the head of the marketing board in Abuja, and he provided an insight into why Erifai did what he did while he was there as the Minister of the FCT. He used the case of, you will say, market, for instance, that had maybe, I don't have the exact numbers now, maybe like you had 350 authorized, outlets there for displaying your wares, and after a while, people had like over 1,500 unauthorized, containers, metal containers here and there. And you see, when you look at, let us not forget that we are talking about our federal capital here, which is supposed to be a microcosm of Nigeria as a country here. So if we can abuse the master plan of our country's microcosm, then it means it's a reflection to the outsider of what we do on a larger scale. With that, I want to agree with the Minister of the FCT. But then, body language also matters in governance. If the head is seen as being weak, trust me, nothing you say will matter. It's just backing. So okay, it's good that he actually came out, blazing that way. But like Idahosa said, I would have expected a softer opening remark. I mean, it was his first day in office. There was no need for me to the way I see it, to get people jiggle around you. We know what you can do. We know who you are as a person. At least a softer welcome should have been the approach. Then we'll get to business later. But well, if this is well intended for the country, so be it.
You talked about abuse of the structure of Abuja or the master plan, and I asked earlier, how did we get to that point? Why do we have to demolish? Because this is not the first time such warnings have been given, or we're seeing that buildings that government says or government agencies says were unauthorized will be demolished. So how did it get to that point? Because I know that when people want to start building or when they acquire property, there are processes to these things. There are clearances that are done with the Ministry of Land and Housing. So is it that people intentionally skip this, or they get approvals that are later upturned?
Yeah, I think the point here is what we have seen happen is that you go to an approving authority, and the bureaucracy gives you an approval based on the document you submitted. And there are very few on-site visits to actually see what is going on at the places where these constructions are going on. Maybe because of the size of bureaucracy, they are not able to cover every place where approvals are given. You see, because when you have a city design, you have set out some places where you have to have green, you set out some places where market should be, you set out places where you feel commercial activity can happen and residential areas. And so once you give approval and people bring documents to you and you take that document, but what you see is that people go back where they are supposed to be residential, they start to build commercial structures. And of course, when buildings are going on, you are not likely to know what is happening around that place. So these are some of the issues. And then of course, you know that in bureaucracy, somebody give an approval today, people don't go to work and start to be reading and looking at what kind of approval is there. So what people do with approval is a different ball game altogether. But again, this is to speak to the lawlessness that we find in the environment, that people don't put to use whatever thing that they are given, and then you want to see. You see, just like you see, for example, in Lagos, where constructions are going, there are laws, for example, that gives you that if you're going to build a house and you're going to get close to the road, there's a certain diameter you have to observe, which they call the setback.
Yeah.
And this is to forestall challenges when, of course, expansion may be needed. But not many people respect the rule of the setbacks. They're all there. And these are the things that we face. And I think it's to speak to us, our consciences, so that when we are going to do things, we must put the law into context, so that when people start to act, we don't regard them as witch hunting, as people are saying. And then, of course, we don't cry foul and say, oh, somebody's property is being demolished. Yeah. Because in the first place, it's an illegality. And once you put down illegality, and I think in the face of the law, you are justified.
One of those things he also mentioned that was of concern to me was the case of land speculators. You approach the government or the FCT ministry or whatever, and they sell to you a piece of property, maybe at 200,000 naira now. Instead of going there to build on it, you refuse to, not because you don't have capacity to, but you know that land appreciates over time. Land that was sold to you for you to build on, you now wait for a while and you start selling at hundreds of millions. Or that. He said that. Now,
but is that a crime?
No, I was about asking, is this a crime? Maybe.
I think it is. You see, there's a tenure and validity for C of O's. And I think a lot of people don't understand this. That when the state gives you a C of O, it's for a certain tenure. And you are expected within a certain time period to be able to develop that property. Now, once you are not able to develop the property, of course, even though you have the C of O of that land, the law says in some states it's 2 years.
Okay.
After 2 years, they give you a property, you are not able to develop that property, the C of O expires.
But we have these days a lot of persons
it can be
going
reassigned
into real estate investment. So how does that balance out? Because people want to put money into property that they do not actually have need for, but because of inflation, they don't want to keep money in the bank. So if someone buys a property, it then means that the person is forced within a limited period of time to resell that property.
No, but you understand that, of course, in the elementary economics, land is the major factor in production. So when you put your land on hold, what you're doing is actually putting production on hold, and you're also stagnating the economy. That's what it means. So you can't speculate with land because it's so fundamental to the development and the economy of any nation. So government guides this, and this is why land is not private property. It's actually owned by the states, because it is fundamental to production and to wealth creation.
All right, so in case you didn't know, now you know. When you're buying land, you need to think very well for how long you want to keep it. How long are you allowed to keep the land before you resell or do whatever it is you want to do it, and ensure that you get the right approval and you comply with the approval you're giving within that limit. And I think also that those at the agencies or the authorities that issue this approval should move out of the office sometimes. On-site inspection is also necessary, so that where people have failed to perhaps do their job or not completely do their job, they don't pass on the liability to somebody else. Let's move on to another issue where the federal government of Nigeria is collaborating with Nasarawa State to establish a local lithium processing policy. Now, the initiative aims to process lithium mined in Nasarawa within the country instead of exporting it raw. We talked about development of the solid mineral industry sometime last week, and we talked about how we are still at the basis doing just exploration and having the raw minerals, and then we export still like we do for oil, exploring crude, and then we still export out of Nigeria to refine. But this time around, in partnership, the federal government in partnership with Nasarawa State wants to begin the processing of lithium. What's your take on that, Ayo?
Well, I think for me, it is where we should have been. For a long time now, we've been complaining that we are exporting raw. And one of the indices by which they measure whether you are a developed economy or a developing one is how much of your own raw materials do you process into finished goods. Okay, lithium from my elementary chemistry is one of the components for making batteries. If I don't know any other thing, I still remember that one. So, and if there is this lithium rush, according to this particular news,
similar to Gold Rush.
Now, this is the time for us to take advantage. Let's not forget that some benefits come, economic benefits that come with, establishing a processing unit in your locale. Talk about employment opportunities for the people of that particular neighborhood, because we still have the local contents, initiative. Now, when you do this, now you are bringing in foreign direct investors and you are building your own economy. Enough of us exporting just raw materials only. And that is just why I said, for me, it is. But
now, they are
even saying it is still a policy level anyway. The journey is still long. That's where I say it.
It's okay.
Why are you laughing?
I am laughing because, you see, it's very easy for us to speculate on what should be done, especially when it has to do with this area. If you had listened to Maguire very well the other day, he spoke about how expensive it is to process solid minerals. And of course, not many people within here have, one, the capacity, and then of course, the resource it takes to actually do this processing. And this requires you to actually have to encourage people from the other side to come to invest in this environment. Now, but the challenge that we face as a people, will foreigners want to set up factory in this area that is so regarded as security risk? And I think this is where we have to first of all put our acts together. Now, when you look at the neighborhood of Nasarawa, Taraba, Benue State, it has become a hotbed of crisis. in recent time. And until security is restored to that area, it will be very difficult to find people who want to come and stake their money, and then they will not be able to take profit out at the end of the day. So this is the real challenge, because we don't have the capacity, we don't have what it takes to be able to process these things here. And so people would prefer to take it away raw, which is less riskier than really setting up factories that, of course, security challenge may not allow to function. And I think this is the area where, of course, Mr. President really need to work hard. We can say all that we can for foreign direct investment to come into this country that will actually stimulate the growth which we all deserve. Then we must be very serious to have a security strategy that will ensure that we are safe enough for foreign investments.
All right, on the foreign scene, former U.S. President Donald Trump, the leading contender for the Republican nomination in the 2024 presidential race, has officially confirmed that he will not participate in the upcoming Republican primary debate. Now, he's said that he's hinted at his decision, arguing that his high recognition among the American public made it unnecessary to provide his Republican rivals with a platform to challenge him. So, what's your take on Trump refusing to attend the Republican primary debate, but instead he wants to release an interview that was done with a Fox presenter, a Fox News host, Tucker Carlson, instead of attending the debate? Is that Trump playing his cards too far? Like,
well, you really can't say Trump is playing his card too far. That is the Trump brand itself. Trump has his own ways. He believes in himself a lot. I remember that when he came, at this particular point in his first time in office, I mean the only time he has done so far in office, one question was asked, the very first question, is there anyone among you here who would not be satisfied with whoever emerges as the Republican candidate after this primary? And Trump said, yes, it's either me or no one else. So right from the word go, Trump courted controversy, and his campaign and his entire presidency thrived on controversy. He has this relation with his own, I wouldn't call it ego. He believes so much in himself, and the Trump card won for him. Now, this is very strategic. He said he will not honor his co-contestants by being on the same stage because he believes he is more popular. This, for me, is a test of his popularity, and it is left to the American citizens to determine how popular he is. In some climes, this will be seen as an affront. You are taking your popularity too far. You are believing too much in yourself. But in America, hey, anything can happen.
But also, do you see it as being strategic, Trump wanting to avoid certain questions that will come from the debates?
Trump is just being strategic, and in the last 6 or so years, him being in the front role of the American politics, a lot has happened, and Trump is one enemy that not even just American, that the world don't want to see. And I think this is because of his position on moving to national interest and breaking the bond of this multilateralism, and then, of course, having one world, as it were. You know, this idea of American for the Americans really was a threat to so many people, and even to the Americans. That said, you see, what it is that, you see, the Democrats over the last 2 years have been on Trump case. Not even the Republicans. And if you look at the bias of the mainline media in the U.S. against Trump in his first tenure, and all through the campaign, now exposing himself to the media in a debate will really be a huge issue. But he already caught the support of the Republicans. And so if they are to go to Congress tomorrow and they are going to vote, of course the Republicans will vote Trump. And so which is more important? To get embarrassed by the media or to secure the nomination of his party to run for election? And I think he has taken the best option, and that is to stay out of the media and then, of course, focus on the campaign to pick up the Republican ticket.
And I think it's a smart one, too, the way he played it. He played it on the ground of popularity and confidence. So people will think, oh, Trump is feeling too confident. He's actually not wanting to partake in the debate because he feels there's no point but actually it seems like it's a smart move to do rather than everybody firing shots at him, particularly considering the number of cases that he has, the capital rights and all of the matters that may be thrown at him at the debate. We'll leave it here and see what happens regarding the 2024 presidential race in the U.S.